Section 48 of The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lin Li. The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 1, by Cao Xueqin. Translated by Henry Bencroft Joly. Chapter 20, Part 2. Of the whole night there is nothing to record. But the next day, when he got up at early dawn, Hsüeh had already perspired during the night, so that she felt considerably lighter and better. But limiting her diet to a little rice soup, she remained quiet and nursed herself, and Pao-yü was so relieved in mind that he came after his meal over on this side to his Aunt Hsüeh's on a saunter. The season was the course of the first moon, and the school was shut up for the New Year holidays, while in the inner chambers the girls had put by their needlework and were all having a time of leisure, and hence it was that when Jiahuan too came over in search of distraction, he discovered Pao-ch'ai, Xiangling, Ying-er, the three of them, in the act of recreating themselves by playing at chess. Jiahuan, at the sight of them, also wished to join in their games, and Pao-ch'ai, who had always looked upon him with, in fact, the same eye as she did Pao-yü, and with no different sentiment of any kind, pressed him to come up, upon hearing that he was on this occasion desirous to play. And, when he had seated himself together with them, they began to gamble, staking each time a pile of 10 cash. The first time he was the winner, and he felt supremely elated at heart. But as it happened that he subsequently lost in several consecutive games, he soon became a prey to considerable distress. But in due course came the game in which it was his turn to cast the dice, and, if in throwing he got 7 spots, he stood to win, but he was likewise bound to be a winner were he to turn up 6. And when Ying-er had turned up 3 spots and lost, he consequently took up the dice, and dashing them with spite, one of them settled at 5, and, as the other reeled wildly about, Ying-er clapped her hands and kept on shouting 1 spot, while Jiahuan at once gazed with a fixed eye and cried at random, "It's 6, it's 7, it's 8!" But the dice, as it happened, turned up at 1 spot, and Jiahuan was so exasperated that, putting out his hand, he speedily made a snatch at the dice, and eventually was about to lay hold of the money, arguing that it was 6 spot. But Ying-er expostulated. It was distinctly an ace, she said, and as Pao-ch'ai noticed how distressed Jiahuan was, she forthwith cast a glance at Ying-er and observed, "The older you get, the less manners you have. Is it likely that gentleman will cheat you? And don't you yet put down the money?" Ying-er felt her whole heart much aggrieved, but as she heard Pao-ch'ai make these remarks, she did not presume to utter a sound, and as she was under the necessity of laying down the cash, she muttered to herself, "This one calls himself a gentleman, and yet cheats us of these few cash, for which I myself even have no eye. The other day, when I played with Mr. Pao-yü, he lost ever so many, and yet he did not distress himself, and what remained of the cash were besides snatched away by a few servant girls, but all he did was to smile, that's all." Pao-ch'ai did not allow her time to complete what she had to say, but there and then called her to account and made her desist, whereupon Jiahuan exclaimed, "How can I compare with Pao-yü? You all fear him, and keep on good terms with him, while you all look down upon me for not being the child of my lady." And as he uttered these words, he at once gave way to tears. "My dear cousin," Pao-ch'ai hastened to advise him, "leave off at once language of this kind, for people will laugh at you," and then went on to scold Ying-er when Pao-yü just happened to come in. Perceiving him in this plight, "What is the matter?" he asked, but Jiahuan had not the courage to say anything. Pao-ch'ai was well aware of the custom, which prevailed in their family, that younger brothers lived in respect of the elder brothers, but she was not, however, cognizant of the fact that Pao-yü would not that any one should entertain any fear of him. His idea being that elder as well as younger brothers had, all alike, father and mother to admonish them, and that there was no need for any of that officiousness, which, instead of doing good, gave, on the contrary, rise to estrangement. Besides, he reasoned, I'm the offspring of the primary wife, while he's the son of the secondary wife, and, if by treating him as leniently as I have done, there are still those to talk about me, behind my back, how could I exercise any control over him? But besides these, there were other still more foolish notions which he fostered in his mind. But what foolish notions they were can you, reader, guess? As a result of his growing up, from his early youth, among a crowd of girls, of whom, in the way of sister, there was Yuan Chun, of cousins, from his paternal uncle sides, there were Ying Chun and Xu Chun, and of relatives also there were Xu Xiangyun, Lin Tai-yü, Hsüeh Pao-ch'ai, and the rest. He in due course resolved in his mind that the divine and unsullied virtue of heaven and earth was only implanted in womankind, and that men were no more than feculent dregs and foul dirt. And for this reason it was that men were without discrimination considered by him as so many filthy objects which might or might not exist, while the relationships of father, paternal uncles, and brothers he did not, however, presume to disregard, as these were among the injunctions bequeathed by the holy man, and he felt bound to listen to a few of their precepts. But to the above causes must be assigned the fact that, among his brothers, he did no more than accomplish the general purport of the principle of human affections, bearing in mind no thought whatever that he himself was a human being of the male sex, and that it was his duty to be an example to his younger brothers. And this is why Chia Huan and the others entertained no respect for him, though in their veneration for dowager lady Jia they yielded to him to a certain degree. Pao-ch'ai harbored fears lest, on this occasion, Pao-yü should call him to book, and put him out of face, and she there and then lost no time in taking Chia Huan's part with a view to screening him. "In this felicitous first moon, what are you blubbering for?" Pao-yü inquired. "If this place isn't nice, why then go somewhere else to play? But from reading books, day after day, you've studied so much that you've become quite a dunce. If this thing, for instance, isn't good, that must, of course, be good, so then discard this and take up that, but is it likely that by sticking to this thing and crying for a while that it will become good? You came originally with the idea of reaping some fun, and you've instead provoked yourself to displeasure. And isn't it better then that you should be off at once?" Chia Huan, upon hearing these words, could not but come back to his quarters, and Mrs. Chao, noticing the frame of mind in which he was, felt constrained to inquire, "Where is it that you've been looked down upon by being made to fill up a hole and being trodden underfoot?" "I was playing with cousin Pao-ch'ai," Chia Huan readily replied, "when Ying Er insulted me and deprived me of my money, and brother Pao-yü drove me away." "Tsui!" exclaimed Mrs. Chao, "who bade you presume so high as to get up into that lofty tray? You low and barefaced thing, what place is there that you can't go to and play? And who told you to run over there and bring upon yourself all this shame?" As she spoke, Lady Feng was, by a strange coincidence, passing outside under the window, so that every word reached her ear, and she speedily asked from the outside of the window, "What are you up to in this happy first moon? These brothers really but mere children, and will you just for a slight mistake go on preaching to him? What's the use of coming out with all you've said? Let him go wherever he pleases, for there are still Our Lady and Mr. Chia Zheng to keep him in order. But you go and sputter him with your gigantic mouth, he is at present a master, and if there be anything wrong about him, there are, after all, those to rate him, and what business is that of yours? Brother Huan, come out with you, and follow me, and let us go and enjoy ourselves." Chia Huan had ever been in greater fear and trembling of lady Feng than of madame Wang, so that when her summons reached his ear, he hurriedly went out, while Mrs. Chao, on the other hand, did not venture to breathe a single word. You too, resumed Lady Feng, addressing Jia Huan, are a thing devoid of all natural spirit. I've often told you that if you want to eat, drink, play, or laugh, you are quite free to go and play with whatever female cousin, male cousin, or sister-in-law you choose to disport yourself with. But you won't listen to my words. On the contrary, you let all these persons teach you to be depraved in your heart, perverse in your mind, to be sly, artful, and domineering. And you've, besides, no respect for your own self, but will go with that low-bred lot. And your perverse purpose is to grudge people's preferences. But what you've lost are simply a few cash, and do you behave in this manner? How much did you lose? She proceeded to ask Jia Huan, and Jia Huan, upon hearing this question, felt constrained to obey, by saying something in the way of a reply. I've lost, he explained, some 100 or 200 cash. You have, rejoined Lady Feng, the good fortune of being a gentleman, and do you make such a fuss for this loss of 100 or 200 cash? And turning her head round, Feng er, she added, go and fetch 1,000 cash, and as the girls are all playing in the back, take him along to go and play, and if again by and by you're so mean and deceitful, I shall, first of all, beat you, and then tell some one to report it at school, and won't your skin be flayed for you? All because of this want of respect of yours, your elder cousin is so angry with you that his teeth itch, and were it not that I prevent him, he would hit you with his foot in the stomach and kick all your intestines out. Get away, she then cried, whereupon Jia Huan obediently followed Feng er, and taking the money he went all by himself to play with Ying Chun and the rest, where we shall leave him without another word. But to return to Pao-yü. He was just amusing himself and laughing with Pao-ch'ai when at an unexpected moment he heard someone announce that Miss Shih had come. At these words, Pao-yü rose, and was at once going off when, "Wait," shouted Pao-ch'ai with a smile, "and we'll go over together and see her." Saying this, she descended from the stove couch, and came in company with Pao-yü to Dowager Lady Jia's on this side, where they saw Shi Xiangyun laughing out loud and talking immoderately, and upon catching sight of them both, she promptly inquired after their healths and exchanged salutations. Lin Tai-yü just happened to be standing by, and having set the question to Pao-yü, "Where do you come from?" "I come from cousin Pao-ch'ai's rooms," Pao-yü readily replied. Tai-yü gave a sardonic smile. "What I maintain is this," she rejoined, "that luckily enough for you, you were detained over there, otherwise you would long ago have at once come flying in here." "Am I only free to play with you?" Pao-yü inquired, "and to dispel your ennui?" "I simply went over to her place for a run, and that quite casually, and will you insinuate all these things?" "Your words are quite devoid of sense," Tai-yü added. "Whether you go or not, what's that to me? Neither did I tell you to give me any distraction, you're quite at liberty from this time forth not to pay any notice to me." Saying this, she flew into a high dudgeon, and rushed back into her room, but Pao-yü promptly followed in her footsteps. "Here you are again in a huff," he urged, "and all again for no reason. Had I even passed any remark that I shouldn't, you should anyhow have still sat in there, and chatted and laughed with the others for a while, instead of that, you come again to sit and mope all alone." "Are you my keeper?" Tai-yü expostulated. "I couldn't, of course," Pao-yü smiled, "presume to exercise any influence over you, but the only thing is that you are doing your own health harm." "If I do ruin my health," Tai-yü rejoined, "and I die, it's my own lookout. What's that to do with you?" "What's the good," protested Pao-yü, "of talking in this happy first moon of dying and living?" "I will say die," insisted Tai-yü. "Die now, at this very moment. But you're afraid of death, and you may live a long life of 100 years, but what good will that be? If all we do is to go on nagging in this way," Pao-yü remarked smiling, "will I any more be afraid to die? On the contrary, it would be better to die and be free. Quite so, continued Tai-yü with alacrity. If we go on nagging in this way, it would be better for me to die, and that you should be free of me. I speak of my own self dying, Pao-yü added, so don't misunderstand my words and accuse people wrongly. While he was as yet speaking, Pao-ch'ai entered the room. Cousin Hsüeh is waiting for you, she said, and with these words she hastily pushed Pao-yü on, and they walked away. Tai-yü, meanwhile, became more and more a prey to resentment, and disconsolate as she felt, she shed tears in front of the window. But not time enough had transpired to allow 2 cups of tea to be drunk before Pao-yü came back again. At the sight of him, Tai-yü sobbed still more fervently and incessantly, and Pao-yü, realizing the state she was in, and knowing well enough how arduous a task it would be to be her around, began to join together 100, yet 1,000 kinds of soft phrases and tender words to console her. But at an unforeseen moment, and before he could himself open his mouth, he heard Tai-yü anticipate him. "What have you come back again for?" she said. "Let me die or live, as I please, and have done. You've really got at present someone to play with you. One who, compared with me, is able to read and able to compose, able to write, to speak, as well as to joke. One too who, for fear lest you should have ruffled your temper, dragged you away. And what do you return here for now?" Pao-yü, after listening to all she had to say, hastened to come up to her. "Is it likely," he observed in a low tone of voice, "that an intelligent person like you isn't so much as aware that near relatives can't be separated by a distant relative, and a remote friend set aside an old friend? I'm stupid, there's no gainsaying, but I do anyhow understand what these 2 sentiments imply. You and I are, in the first place, cousins on my father's sister's side, while sister Pao-ch'ai and I are 2 cousins on my mother's sides, so that, according to the degrees of relationship, she's more distant than yourself. In the second place, you came here first, and we 2 have our meals at one table and sleep in one bed, having ever since our youth grown up together, while she has only recently come, and how could I ever distance you on her account?" "Tch!" Tai-yü exclaimed, "will I forsooth ever make you distance her? Who and what kind of person have I become to do such a thing? What I said was prompted by my own motives." "I too," Pao-yü urged, "made those remarks prompted by my own heart's motives. And do you mean to say that your heart can only read the feelings of your own heart, and has no idea whatsoever of my own?" Tai-yü, at these words, lowered her head and said not a word. But after a long interval, "You only know," she continued, "how to feel bitter against people for their action in censuring you, but you don't, after all, know that you yourself provoke people to such a degree that it's hard for them to put up with it. Take for instance the weather of today as an example. It's distinctly very cold today, and yet, how is it that you are so contrary as to go and divest yourself of the pelisse with the bluish breast fur overlapping the cloth?" "Why say I didn't wear it?" Pao-yü smilingly observed. "I did, but seeing you get angry, I felt suddenly in such a terrible blaze that I at once took it off." Tai-yü heaved a sigh. "You'll by and by catch a cold," she remarked, "and then you'll again have to starve, and vociferate for something to eat." While these 2 were having this colloquy, Hsiang Yun was seen to walk in. "You 2, I cousin and cousin Lin," she ventured jokingly, "are together playing every day, and though I've managed to come after ever so much trouble, you pay me no heed at all." "It's invariably the rule," Tai-yü retorted smilingly, "that those who have a defect in their speech will insist upon talking. She can't even come up correctly with cousin, and keeps calling him I cousin. And by when you play Wei Qi, you're sure also to shout Yao I instead of san 1 2 3." Pao-yü laughed. "If you imitate her, he interposed, and get into that habit, you'll also begin to bite your tongue when you talk. She won't make even the slightest allowance for anyone, Xiang Yun rejoined, her sole idea being to pick out others' faults. You may readily be superior to any mortal being, but you shouldn't, after all, offend against what's right and make fun of every person you come across. But I'll point out someone, and if you venture to jeer her, I'll at once submit to you." "Who is it?" Tai-yü vehemently inquired. "If you do have the courage," Xiang Yun answered, "to pick out cousin Pao-ch'ai's faults, you then may well be held to be first-rate." Tai-yü, after hearing these words, gave a sarcastic smile. "I was wondering," she observed, "who it was. Is it indeed she? How could I ever presume to pick out hers?" Pao-yü allowed her no time to finish, but hastened to say something to interrupt the conversation. "I couldn't, of course, during the whole of this my lifetime," Xiang Yun laughed, "attain your standard. But my earnest wish is that by and by should be found for you, cousin Lin, a husband, who bites his tongue when he speaks, so that you should every minute and second to listen to 哎呀yo's and 阿弥陀佛. Won't then your reward be manifest to my eyes?" As she made this remark, they all burst out laughing heartily, and Xiang Yun speedily turned herself round and ran away. But reader, do you want to know the sequel? Well then, listen to the explanation given in the next chapter. End of section 48.